So 11 a.m. Citigroup's conference call. What is going to be the first question?
What are you going to do when you go back to the Fed? Are you going to ask for the same thing? Are you going to ask to return less capital? Are you going to just table the whole thing until next year? That's top of mind for investors and analysts. But it's not clear that they're going to get much of an answer because my understanding is the Citi is still trying to work through, why they got different results from the Fed, what the Fed got, and how they can sort of, they're trying to get some guidance from the Fed about how to proceed.
Right.
And
You're talking about this last round of stress testing.
Exactly, which, they basically, it's trying to determine, whether banks will have enough capital to keep lending if we go through another downturn.
Right. Which they say they do have enough. The Fed said they didn't. No one says fail, right? No one says pass or fail. But Citi says that they did. The Fed said they didn't, and Citi's trying to figure out what the difference is between
so
those two.
Citi didn't fail. They did pass. The issue is, will they have enough capital if they go ahead and take some of that capital and give it back to shareholders in terms of a buyback or a dividend? If they do that, then the Fed says, we think your capital levels are too low. So that's where the issue is. And Citi, feels at a disadvantage because J.P. Morgan and Wells and other banks have been buying back stock and raising their dividends. Citi, if you remember, they eliminated their dividend during the crisis. They only last year raised it to 1 cent a share. That compares to other banks that are like 30 cents a share. So they very much want to be able to do this.
How big a source of frustration was it for investors when the news came out that the stress test indicated that Citi would not be able to carry out its plans as hoped for? And if it was a source of frustration, does that push the bank in a certain direction it might not be ready to go into yet, meaning to try to propose something before it's time to actually propose it?
It was a big surprise, both, I think, to Citi people internally and to investors. Everybody thought they were going to pass. And it was it was a big black eye. And to investors, it said, this bank still doesn't really have great judgment here. Some investors I talked to said, why did they ask for anything? They should have just passed the test free and clear. They're trying to do too much too soon. So, I think a lot of people were very surprised and disappointed.
Now, did you see anything in the earnings this morning that indicated maybe they're in a stronger position than they were back then?
Well, their capital ratios, the two that they disclosed were, one of them increased, and they, according to some analysts, they're only sort of very slightly behind J.P. Morgan on this measure. So that might help them when they go back to the Fed and give them a little more ammo to make their case. But, we'll see.
Right.
Has there been any clarification on what the discrepancy is between what Citigroup found in its calculations of its capital position and what the Fed found?
That's sort of the big question that I think Citi is still trying to get to the bottom of, and we don't really have much clarity on that yet.
No. And what kind of time frame are we looking at here? Do we have any ideas?
So banks have to resubmit by mid-June, and then the Fed is expected to give their response within 75 days, if not sooner. So sometime in September, probably, we should have answers.
All right, that's good. We'll leave it there. Suzanne Kapner, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.